Rhaenyra and Damian went to the brothel, it's brought up the fact that Viserys' dad, you know, his hand dies. And guess who conveniently takes his place? Otto Hightower. And it's kind of the same thing later down the road in history, where guess what? Jon Arryn he seemingly dies out of nowhere. A man in relatively good health just up and dies. And so when he, you know, he becomes Hand of the King later, not because Viserys wanted it, but because Alicent puts him back in that position. But it's interesting because Tower has all these ambitions of making his family kind of. He has the same ambitions that you can say is that how you pronounce it?
Who?
Tyrion's dad. I think it's Tywin. Yes, Tywin Lannister. You almost can see where the Lannisters kind of got the example from. You know, because he's inserting himself into this. He's doing all this stuff to make his family better, in terms of speak. And also, I don't know if people know this, but the Martells, or I believe that's how you say their last name, Marjorie, Lady Olenna, Loras, they come from the Hightower line.
Oh.
Because someone breaks off and marries Olenna's ancestor, and that's how you get the House of the Rose, I believe is what they're called.
Okay.
Because their banner is flowers. But I do think the Hightowers do die off, but they do have a connection of sorts, which is always interesting to me. But yeah, no,
yeah, I mean, my whole thing with Viserys summed up in the early part of season 1 is that he seems to have made a grave error because he could have had a much better relationship with the Valerians, and
he didn't.
When he didn't do that, and then he went to marry Alicent, which soured Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship.
Yeah,
and then later on, as they get older, they end up, you know, having a lot of tension and stuff because of Alicent being very sacrificial and going along with Viserys, and Rhaenyra sort of, you know, kind of being choosing her own destiny and being a special girl, you know, in the storyline.
Within the confines of what, you know. I do think Viserys, I mean, I don't know, realistically, I'm kind of glad he didn't, you know, I think, well, she was like 12, 10. I mean, maybe a 14.
The Valerian girl?
Yeah, I kind of am glad he didn't, like, I mean, 14,
Fair,
14 is not great. No, 14 is still, it's still a child, but I kind of, you know, in a way, I'm kind of like, eh. I think they were 16, actually.
I agree, but then I'm curious. I'm like, what do you think? What do you think would have happened actually? If they if you know Viserys didn't try to marry Alicent, how would there still have been a Dance of the Dragon?
I still think, in a way, yes, because I think Otto Hightower. I mean, this man has been implied to have killed Jacaerys' hand. Because he got placed as Hand of the King a day after that man died. So I don't doubt that Otto Hightower would have done something to have caused it. I do think that the easiest way was just to get his daughter to marry, so he didn't have to do it the hard way. Which is, you know, help a Baratheon in a rebellion. But I think Viserys, it's very implied throughout the show, if you pay attention, that Viserys was not meant to be king, that he did not want to be king, and that in fact he wanted to literally build his Legos. and like be at peace. You know, he just wanted his family and to build his little Legos. And then he was thrusted up. He doesn't help Valerian with the stepping stones. So it causes more of a rift. He then chooses to antagonize Damon. Now, I'm not saying Damon was a perfect character, but, like, he was the one person who had, like, was looking out for Viserys in terms of, like, people trying to take advantage, and then he alienated that relationship. And then because then he gets mad at Rhaenyra for the fact that she went out to a brothel, which is interesting because, you know, you see the sexism where he's like, yeah, but you can't do that. You actually can't have those freedoms. You thought you did, you can't do that, you're a woman. And so ultimately when he didn't back Rhaenyra up enough when she became the heir. He just was like, oh no, they'll remember their oaths when I die, right? I don't have to say anything for 20 years. You know, I don't have to defend my daughter for 20 years. In being the successor. Because Otto Hightower's had 20 years to plan this rebellion. Like, Viserys put no stepping stones in place to protect Rhaenyra in the line of succession because he thought everyone would respect his decision. And he should have known that someone would have tried something. Like, it's not that difficult to think about that. And so he defends. He doesn't defend Rhaenyra for 20 years, except for when he's on his deathbed, and even then, the man's on his deathbed. So like, it's not much. And it's one of those things where like, he ultimately, I don't think knew, he wanted to keep the peace, but he did so at the cost of his daughter. And I think ultimately at the cost of his realm. And the thing also too is Alicent and Rhaenyra's thing comes from the fact that from Alicent's point of view, Rhaenyra could do whatever she wanted. What she didn't know is that Rhaenyra really couldn't do what she wanted. It just seemed like she could. And she was mad that Rhaenyra was rebellious. She was mad that she didn't stay within what a woman should be. And what she was forced to be, ultimately. She's like, oh, you have a lover? How dare you? Oh, you're happy? How dare you? You should be pumping out kids and unhappy, like I am.
Yeah.
You should be forced into the role I am. And so she didn't like the fact that Rhaenyra was rebelling against it, because she didn't like that. And ultimately, that's why she kept checking after each child to see if the hair was white. But she's like, I know your bitch ass is having a lover.
Yeah, exactly.
Rhaenyra's.
Yeah, exactly.
You
like,
know?
she ends up having this resentment for Rhaenyra, yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you know, because they keep calling out the fact that she's like, oh, Laenor, one day they'll be yours. Apparently, early in their marriage, they did try. Laenor just could never finish. So that's why all the first children are part of the
Yeah, yeah.
and later on are Daemon.
But as we reach the end, as we've reached the end here, let's see. I mean, you know, the interesting summarizing opinions of the finale here is very interesting. I guess the main scene that people, of course, want to talk about is, like, you know,
Obviously, yeah.
the Lucerys dying or whatever, because I mean, people talked about that like a lot initially, you know.
Yeah.
As like a season finale thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's funny when you actually see it, right? When you actually experience it or whatever, it's such a different tale because then it's like people are like, oh, it was played up as an accident, whereas in the first level race, and it didn't go well.
Yeah.
Right? Like he specifically, you know, um, brings this giant dragon up on him, right? And but besides that, like, because but it is an accident in the sense that it's not down to the T what he would have wanted to have happened. But so that's the issue with Aemond and Lucerys. Let's see.
I do think
What happened?
yeah,
Because we watched episode 9 and 10 tonight.
Yeah. So I do think it was accident in the sense that he did not mean for he did not mean to kill Luke, but it's also really freaking like interesting that he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna chase this fucking child in a much bigger dragon. Like, what did he? I'm curious on what he thought was gonna happen, because obviously the kid's gonna be scared. So it's like, do you think that, do you think that it's just gonna be like easy peasy? Like, what did you think was gonna go on? And so, the funny thing is like, he has a right to feel like he needs justice, but at the same time, like, he was old enough to know that calling Lucerys a bastard was, like, treasonous.
Yeah.
Like, and then he's like, oh wow, I lost my eye. And I'm like, yeah, because you're lucky you didn't lose your life.
Yeah.
Because that also could have happened. And then, it was very annoying for me to see him be like, you cost me an eye, you wronged me. And I'm like, if you wouldn't have been spouting the same nonsense your mom has been spouting, we wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, as a person who hasn't, read Dance of the Dragon, or whatever it's called in the books, it's interesting to see, this interesting, because what's funny is Aemond, Ewan Mitchell looks eerily similar to Matt Smith, so it's funny to see that there's this interesting duality and foil that we're gonna get now, right? Like with Daemon and Aemond, because it's like the actors look similar, they've gone through similar hairstyles, and then they have this duality now where they're totally going to be at each other's throats, and their names are even similarly spelled, characters.
Yeah.
So, it's a very intriguing thing. I'm like, oh, okay, is that what this is kind of, in terms of a quick little marketing ploy, you could say that is what this is really about, is Daemon versus Aemond. Or that's certainly what it becomes.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that they do end up going, I think, back to back, or not back to, they end up facing each other, in a very interesting kind of battle, because people often compare, they're like, Aegon is Daemon, like, when he was younger, but they're also like, he may be 40 years old, but he's never left the prime of his life. And so you see throughout the series when Aemond is older, that he actually kind of respects Daemon, like, he actually respects him as a warrior and as a person. Like when he cuts Daemon's head off, when he speaks, he doesn't challenge him in the same way he challenges everyone else. And I think that's really interesting, in terms of that. And you see, and also I think too is Allison's so goddamn petty about the fact